Why did your groceries, gas, and gadgets suddenly get more expensive? What changed almost overnight that shook up prices across America? The answer starts with one bold move: fast-tracked tariffs. In today's video, we're breaking down how former President Trump bypassed the usual long-processed slap tariffs on major trading partners, and why that decision might come back to bite. This isn't just about politics. It's about your paycheck, your shopping cart, and the future of U.S. trade. What are tariffs, and how they normally work? Tariffs are taxes on goods we import from other countries. Think of it like this. If a company wants to bring in TVs from Asia, a tariff adds extra cost to each TV. That money goes to the U.S. government, but in reality, it usually ends up coming out of your pocket. Now, under normal circumstances, putting a tariff in place isn't quick. There's a whole process that involves economists, trade experts, business leaders, and even public hearings. It can take months or even years. The goal is to make sure the decision is smart and doesn't accidentally hurt regular Americans or businesses. It's all about balance. But President Trump had a different idea. Trump's shortcut to action. During his presidency, Donald Trump didn't want to wait. Instead of going through all those steps, he acted quickly. How? He used older laws to bypass the regular system. Specifically, he leaned on a law called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. This law was made in the 1970s and was designed for emergencies like terrorism or nuclear threats, not trade arguments. But Trump declared trade deficits a national emergency, allowing him to skip ahead and place tariffs on countries like China, Mexico, and Canada. To be clear, a trade deficit means the U.S. is buying more from a country than that country is buying from us. Trump believed this imbalance was hurting American workers, and he wanted to fix it fast. The real-life impact on Americans. So what happens when tariffs go into effect overnight? Prices go up, and fast. Imagine a company in the U.S. that buys parts from China to build smartphones. If a tariff is added to those parts, the company suddenly has a tough choice: absorb the cost and lose money, or pass the cost on to customers. Most companies choose the second option. That means the price you pay for things, like phones, TVs, furniture, and even groceries, goes up. In fact, one report showed that American households ended up paying hundreds of dollars more each year because of the new tariffs. And that's just the average. For larger families or people with specific needs, the impact could be even worse. Now multiply that across millions of homes across the country. That's not just a minor inconvenience. It's a major shift in how much everyday Americans spend just to keep up. A simple formula with complicated results. The way Trump's team calculated tariff rates sounded clever, but ended up causing confusion. They used a very basic formula. Take the trade deficit with a country, divide it by the total amount of imports, then cut that number in half. That number became the new tariff rate. It seems simple, almost like solving a math problem in school. But trade isn't that easy. The global economy works like a giant web. When you pull on one part, the rest gets shaken. Using a quick math shortcut to decide something as complex as trade policy can lead to unexpected results. Supply chains get disrupted, prices rise, countries that depend on each other for parts and goods suddenly face delays and extra costs. That's exactly what happened. The world strikes back. When Trump imposed tariffs on other countries, they didn't just stay quiet. They responded with tariffs of their own. That means they started charging more for American products being sold in their countries, and it hit U.S. industries hard. One major example: soja. China used to buy a huge portion of America's soybeans, but after Trump's tariffs, China put tariffs on American soybeans in return. Suddenly, U.S. farmers had no one to sell to. Prices fell fast. Some farmers saw years of hard work disappear in a few short months. And it wasn't just farming. Car manufacturers, steel companies, even whiskey makers in Kentucky were affected. Other countries stopped buying, and jobs were put at risk. Entire communities that depended on trade with other nations started to struggle. So while tariffs were supposed to protect U.S. jobs, they actually hurt many American workers, and badly. Political pushback from all sides. Trump's approach raised eyebrows, not just from Democrats, but from Republicans too. Lawmakers from both sides said one thing: no single person should have this much power over the economy. Several members of Congress argued that calling trade a national emergency was a stretch. After all, trade disagreements aren't the same as a security threat or a war. They said the system needed to change so that checks and balances could be restored. Eventually, the Senate passed a resolution pushing back on Trump's use of emergency powers. And a new bipartisan bill was introduced to take back some of the authority that had been handed to the White House over the years. The goal was to restore checks and balances, just like the Constitution intended. The legal debate. Beyond the political debate, there was also a legal one. Some experts said Trump's use of IEPA for trade didn't match the original purpose of the law. The law was made to help deal with dangerous threats, not disagreements over electronics and car parts. There were lawsuits, court challenges, and lots of discussion about whether presidents should be allowed to declare economic emergencies without Congress. This brings up an important question. If a future president wanted to act fast on trade or anything else, should they be allowed to skip the usual rules? Business uncertainty and job risks. While the political and legal battles were playing out, businesses had to make quick decisions. With prices changing all the time due to tariffs, it became harder to plan. Companies paused hiring, some delayed factory expansions, others started looking outside the U.S. to avoid extra costs. In some cases, small businesses closed because they couldn't compete with the rising expenses. The ripple effects didn't stop at the border. They hit local communities, small towns, and everyday workers. What happens now? The debate over fast-tracked tariffs hasn't ended. Even after Trump left office, the effects of his tariffs linger. Some were removed, others stayed. But the biggest change wasn't just in the prices we paid, it was in how trade decisions are made in America. Now, lawmakers are having serious conversations about limiting presidential power in trade. They want a system where major economic decisions go through a careful review so that no single leader can flip the switch on the global economy. At the same time, some still argue Trump was right to act quickly. They say the old system was too slow and that America needed to stand up to unfair trade practices. But even they admit, the cost of that speed was steep. Speed versus stability. Trump's fast-tracked tariffs might have felt like bold action, but bold doesn't always mean better. When you rush something as big and complex as international trade, you risk more than just upsetting other countries. You risk your own economy, jobs, and families. So, here's the big question. Should one person have the power to change global trade overnight? Or should there be a system, a fair process, that protects regular people from economic,